In this video I will compare Death Knight Unholy spec to Frost spec's performance in a horrific vision and tell you why I think Unholy is simply better. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, Gyro here. Really happy that you joined me today and that you're supporting the growth of this channel with your presence and hopefully with your subscriptions. Now, today we are comparing apples and oranges by looking at Death Knight Frost spec and Death Knight Unholy spec performance in a horrific vision. Why I said apples and oranges, if you are not particularly kind of in tune with all my trend of all these videos and how I do this, I am not trying to or pretending to be particularly statistical or very scientific about it. It is not a sim for you guys. Play what you like. This would be my general advice to you if all you had for me was 30 seconds. But generally, if you are one of those people who are trying to get as much fun as possible or perhaps looking for a new alt, and horrific visions appear to be to you as they are to me as the main solo-friendly content in 8.3 before Shadowlands starts, I would recommend Unholy to you. Having said that, if you haven't seen my separate videos where I do a run with Unholy, where I do a full run and comment on it with Frost, you probably should take a look at those. They are on my channel. But in this one, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing to you sometimes the both runs side by side. It will be edited side by side so that you can actually take a look at the stats, take a look at this and that, and pause if you are trying to reverse engineer this and maybe have a more closer attention. I cannot just pause and sit here waiting for you to read on the screen, so please feel free to pause on your end. And I'm also going to be switching between the footage of Unholy and Frost as I go through critical areas of the run. Critical areas, not everything. So we're going to be looking at how the specs deal with bosses and generally how they feel. What I encourage you to look at, how my health is behaving, whether or not my sanity goes too low. Does my sanity go below 50%? These are the criteria that I, as a casual player, I usually pay attention to, and I encourage you to pay attention to. So when I tell you if the class feels particularly strong or OP or what I would recommend, very, very often it comes to those points. How confident did I feel? Did I feel like a Terminator? Because Death Knights are supposed to feel like Terminators, guys. If Death Knight in your hands, in my opinion, stops feeling like a Terminator at any point in time, in any content, it means something is off. It means that either this is not the optimal spec for the content that you're running, or it means that your gear is subpar. Skill, perhaps, of course, skill is important, but I would say if we are assuming that you are equally skilled, you know, in different specs, it's not rocket science after all. You don't have to push Mythic plus 20 with this, especially solo. Anyway, I hope you're following me. Now, we are using the two runs that are recorded for the two mask runs. Why two mask runs? Because the two masks that I'm using are the easiest masks, yet they are providing a weight on your shoulders. So they are making content more challenging, they are increasing the health pools of all enemies by 50%, they are increasing their damage by 50%, and they are adding annoyances, a little bit of annoyances here and there, right? So it's not, the two mask run is not as trivial as just a full clear, especially when you have a fully leveled up cloak of rank 15 and you have reasonable item level of 450 plus, right? Where would I give points to Frost, first of all, spec? Frost spec does a lot more passive damage to the enemies. And by that I mean Remorseless Winter, and by that I mean Howling Blast. Howling Blast, of course, is a button you have to consciously press, so is Remorseless Winter, but Remorseless Winter is just then an aura around you. You just run around and basically slow down and damage enemies. Howling Blast you have to consciously hit, but Howling Blast is an AoE, so it hits not just your primary intended target, but everyone around it. So it kind of comes a little bit as a semi-passive sort of damage, or at least I classify it as such. Correct me if I'm wrong. So Frost wins in that aspect. If you deal with a lot of smaller enemies, such as aberrations in the horrific vision of Orgrimmar, or such as those civilians in Stormwind, I'd say that that works quite well. But at the same time, Unholy goes far ahead of Frost in intentional AoE. I am really not patenting any of these terms, guys, and I'm not pretending that they're very accurate or very scientific. That's why I spent so much time explaining what I mean. Intentional AoE means you're intentionally infecting primary target with your primary disease, whatever it is called. Right now I'm blanking out what's it called for Death Knights, Unholy Death Knights. You intentionally infecting them with this disease. You are hoping that it will spread, right, between the group. You are intentionally putting as many pestilent pustules on your primary target, or on several targets if you can, with your main attack. And then you're using, and then once you see that you have accumulated 6, you're starting to explode them with your Scourge Strike. And of course, you also throwing where you can. You throw the AoE, you throw the Death and Decay. So Unholy, and that's when the numbers go up. They go up, crazy up. And that's what I think the intentional, that's what I referred to as that intentional, slightly more on purpose type of AoE damage, the exploding of those pustules, setting up and then exploding, as opposed to just running through and freezing everything. That's what I mean. I think that that's when the Unholy skyrockets in damage. But we're not just talking about damage here, and that's not the only reason why I say that Unholy is simply better, in my subjective opinion. Unholy gives you one other tremendous advantage over Frost, and you guessed it, it's your pet. The pet transforms all the time. The pet does not per se taunt your targets, but the pet adds substantial amount of damage. And pet is like, I used this expression in some other videos when I was talking about hunters and demonology warlocks. The pet is the most powerful dot damage over time effect that exists in this game. The pet can always be on target, whether you're fighting Thrall, Illyria, Rexxar, or anyone else. You could be running around like headless chicken, feared, incapacitated, whatever, or hiding behind the pillars on Illyria fight, and your pet could be still punching her in the face. So having that pet as Unholy and being able to also enrage or buff or transform that pet, I think transformation is the term that is used in Unholy world. What else is there to be pointed out and what I'm not shying away from? I tried to keep the conditions of the experiment as close together as possible. It's the same character, first of all. It's the same character. So it's the same cloak, it's the same gear. It's the same Heart of Azeroth, it's the same essences. Talents are obviously different, it's different builds, and weapons are different. Weapons are different. So initial first impressions video power check of a full clear on Frost, I've done with really crappy blue weapons, and as someone pointed out to me, it was not even embarrassing because I saw it myself and we just had a bit of a laugh in comments. I didn't even have runes on those crappy blue weapons for my Frost test run. It was a test run, really. Now, in this run that I'm comparing here, I tried to approximate conditions further as much as possible. Well, first of all, Frost has a better main hand now. I ran a few Mythic Pluses and I was able to get at the very least a 4/4/5 main hand. Offhand is still crappy, is still a crappy 4/20 blue. But at least I used runes on them. At least I have Death Knight runes on those weapons. But that is something I'm not shying away from. So yes, the main hand is a bit better, but still, if you compare weapons that I'm using for Unholy and for Frost, that is not a one-to-one comparison. Certainly not. Unholy's weapon is better, definitely better. Everything else is just comparable. Skill is the same, it's the same player. I love Frost. I have nothing against Frost. I love Frost. I love how it feels and all of that kind of stuff. I would give Frost also, I mean, it's still the same class. Movement through space is still at the same speed. So it's not a speedy class. It's not a speed run class by by any standard. So they're both, Unholy and Frost, are fairly slow. I would, however, probably, just due to how Frost attacks and how it feels, due to how it's all about passively freezing stuff, shooting Howling Blast and knowing it will hit not just this target but those targets as well, I'd say that Frost feels a bit faster than Unholy. Unholy feels a bit slower. I'm a Terminator with a pet. Deal with me. That's how Unholy feels. But perhaps because basically Unholy presents two targets to the enemies, yourself and your pet. And perhaps because of the better weapon, perhaps because of just the build of how Unholy works, whatever, I don't know, okay? But Unholy feels more solid. Unholy feels more like a Terminator. I also had, obviously, the luxury of running these specs in some recordings that I'm not, in some runs that I didn't even record, like not just recordings that I didn't show you. And overall, I'm sharing my overall impression. I do think that Unholy, if you don't care, if you just think, oh, how about I pick a DPS spec for my Death Knight who I used to only tank with, and I run a Horrific Vision. Which one should it be, Gyro? I will tell you, Unholy. It should be Unholy. Unless somehow you just have much better gear for Frost. Let's say you're lucky enough and you ran Mythic Plus or raided Heroic and Mythic raids, and you have a couple of wonderful 470, 465 weapons, as opposed to your Unholy that is 450. Well, I'd say, yeah, man, like, absolutely try giving Frost a proper push. Do it. But overall, I'd say Unholy wins by having an extra DPS friend that is with you. Unholy wins by dispersing enemies and giving them two targets to bash on rather than all come in your face. Unholy wins, in my case, by having a better weapon. Unholy generally wins for me. Please share your comments in the comments section down below this video. I always welcome it. Don't be shy. This is there are no rights and wrongs. It's all about tastes, right? I am sharing my impressions and my taste with you. Hopefully that it's both entertaining and somewhat maybe helpful for you. I really hope so. But at the same time, I welcome your impressions. Have you played Frost, and Frost for some reason feels much better to you? Something that I am missing. It's very possible. That's what this channel is about. It's not just a broadcasting platform. It's also about communication with you guys, because I respect your opinion and I appreciate you assisting me with the growth of this channel. It's been fantastic and it's a lot of fun. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Have a look at the channel, have a look at other videos. It's not just Horrific Vision runs. We often talk about Shadowlands Alpha, sometimes impressions, class guides, general guides. So yeah, I will talk to you next time in a couple of days' time. Videos are coming to you like a freight train. And for now, I'll just shut up, listen to music myself, and enjoy it. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.